Hello, welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast during the month of October. Where we talk about two spooky movies every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. Just a couple of fun conversations, some games, some opinions, some hot takes from Nathan and myself over there that you can go listen to there for only $5 a month. But don't worry, our same content here is totally free. But today, on Thursday, we're going to be talking about 1982 Girls' Night Out, and that is directed by Robert Deubel. This movie is kind of like a mixture. I would say that the one thing they kept using is a mixture of Porky's with Friday the 13th. Is not Porky, Animal House. Sorry, Animal House and Friday the 13th. And you know what? I think that's actually a pretty accurate, honestly. I mean, it's got a lot. It's like it's not as crazy as Animal House, not as bloody as Friday the 13th. So it makes a nice combo. But about a group of college students that get together for a big scavenger hunt, and what do you know? They start dying one by one, and there's a killer on the loose. And this killer, it's a bear, not just a bear mascot,
and a bad looking one too.
That's your opinion.
Oh, okay, you love this guy.
Yeah, I think it looks great. Big,
Uh,
big construction paper yellow eyes with like gray yarn hair, and
yeah, and then like the cheapest bear costume you could find.
well, that's pretty par for the course for this movie. Apparently, reading some of the production of this movie, but like I said, this movie is filmed on a college campus, and the movie's supposed to be set in Ohio. And rumor has it that this movie was shot literally in 3 days, and because they had a college campus that they had free range access to for an entire weekend. So they're like, we gotta shoot this entire movie in 3 days, and the entire cast and crew worked in 24-hour shifts. So they would pretty much stay up all day, all night, film, and then they'd come back and do it all over again.
Yeah, and most shots were were finished in 1 or 2 takes.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of tell, I suppose, but honestly, I mean, it's not a bad movie. I mean, I thought it was pretty good.
Really? Well, or I wasn't into it.
No,
I
okay.
No, see, overall, I think it's interesting. And we'll get into the ending, which is the part that's like stuck with me the longest out of this movie. But like, I think this movie is so boring. So much doesn't happen, and like, there's so many nothing scenes in this movie.
Yeah. See, I was the opposite. I actually was kind of getting into like some of the conversations that were
Really? Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, Nathan, I watched this movie 3 times technically, and
Oh man.
so that's probably why I felt maybe I liked it, because maybe I'm tricking myself into it.
Well, who knows? Who knows? It's okay. I mean, you can enjoy this, and I mean, listening to the commentary, those two people loved this movie. They were talking it up. To me, it feels like a movie that's more interesting in production, how it was made, than how I actually felt about the plot.
Well, since you brought it up, how do you feel? Did you like the commentary?
No, I didn't. I don't think these two people they got had any chemistry.
Well, I didn't like it simply before the fact, because it's like it was a lot of them just like gushing about how much they loved the movie.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, this person was in this movie, and then this person was in this movie. I'm like, okay, like there we'll get into it in a minute, but there's like one really funny moment, like, because there's a okay, well, I guess I'll talk about it right now. So there's a moment in the movie where a character Dutch ovens a woman, like, farts in the covers and throws the covers on top of her, so she has to smell it. And the guy was like, oh, I was always so amused by the farting scene, and the woman was like really
Yeah, I think she
like
was.
really like offended or like just like did not. She's like, I was kind of hoping we could not talk about the fart scene,
Even
like.
though that's an important part of this movie that you love.
And I'm like, well, I mean, it's there. I mean, you don't want. We're not going to talk about this scene that's
Yeah.
in the movie.
Well, and like there was another moment because this movie, and we'll get into it, doesn't really it doesn't have any nudity at all, which is weird
No,
for a slasher. And he's like, oh, it's really interesting that a movie like this wouldn't have nudity at the time, and or violence. She's like, well, I don't want to talk about the nudity, but I'll talk about that the lack of violence. She's totally skipping over the nudity part, which I think is an important thing to talk about because every slasher movie had that at the time.
yeah, well, I mean, they talk about sex and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but there's some stuff in there. But yeah, I don't know. Like you, she seemed more annoyed by him than anything. But
Yeah.
not, it wasn't a great commentary track. I don't recommend the commentary track. That's all I'm going to say about that.
No.
But I don't know. There's some like really funny moments in this movie where uh like so like one of the characters, like the really tall guy, I can't remember his name. I want to say they kept calling him the maniac, but he was like the tall, blonde headed guy, and
Yeah.
he like just broke up with his girlfriend, and they're like, "Hey, we got to take it easy." He just lost his girlfriend and everything, and then I guess the main guy and the main girl were like making out at the table, like in front of him, like, "Oh, hey, we gotta calm this down."
Yeah. No, and this movie is a lot of that. It's a lot of like kissing. It's like you said, it's like Animal House. It's about people's relationships for the first 45 minutes. It's more about them talking to each other, college hijinks, but not like Animal House levels, kind of just like really simple hijinks.
Yeah, there's some. So the high school mascot character, it is at first it's a guy in there named Michael Benson, and you hear that name a lot.
Yes, that's
And
like the one name I remember.
yeah, and he kept showing up, but there was one guy in here. I can't remember his character's name, but it's actually David Holbrook. It's like Hal Holbrook's son.
I didn't
Is
know that until the commentary.
Yeah, like, but he gets broken up with his girlfriend. Well, at first, it's like there's two girls talking, and she goes like, "Oh, you're gonna break up with him, and you're cheating on him with Michael Benson." They're like, she's like, "Hey, that's your cousin." She's like, my second cousin." Like, hold,
And they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine.
yeah, like that's totally acceptable. But
Yeah, but this movie tries to convince you that David Holbrook's character is the killer the whole time because it's very like he's like because the killer before he kills women says like things like whore and slut, and he says those same things throughout the whole movie.
yeah,
Also has a horrible haircut. His hair looks so bad.
yeah, it doesn't look good.
Mhm. I want to
But
make
this
fun of
girl,
his appearances. Sorry.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
Well, no, that's it. That's
Oh.
it.
um, but so like his girlfriend is cheating on him with Michael Benson, but they go to this party, and then
Hmm.
she's making out with Michael Benson at this party,
Hmm.
like in front of her boyfriend, or like, and he's like,
Hmm.
"When are you gonna tell him?" I'm like, "He could see you right there."
And
Like,
he does. He comes over and starts yelling.
and she's like, "I don't know what you're talking." Before that, she's like, he confronts her about it. And she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Like, like trying to make like he's a crazy guy. And
Mhm.
I mean, he doesn't handle it in the best way, because he does try to like be very possessive of her. But I mean, she's like, they're both awful people, is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And I love that his character. I mean, this movie forgets about him like after a certain point. But there's that scene where he's moping on the bench, and Hal Holbrook is in this movie, future Oscar nominee, and he walks over and talks to him on the bench, and they're obviously not together. Hal Holbrook, I guess, according to the commentary, and when I was watching the movie, I could feel it, was not there for any of this. And all of his scenes are filmed away from everybody else. Supposedly it was in an afternoon that all of his scenes were shot.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could just tell
Hmm.
he's just there for the paycheck because
Yeah.
he is
He's
not he's not trying in the heart in the least bit.
he's sitting for 80% of this movie.
Um, but he's kind of like he's like a campus police officer or
Yeah.
whatever, and he keeps talking about the killer, the one who they thought was dead. Like somebody kills himself in the beginning of this movie,
Hmm.
and it's supposed to be Dickie Kavanaugh, which was like this serial killer at a campus who murdered a girl, and the girl he murdered was Hal Holbrook's daughter.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the thing that was funny is that he's confronting David Holbrook, and they're not related in the movie, but he's like, "Son, I heard you were causing a ruckus down at the party." He's like, "Would you lay off, man? You don't know what I've been through." Like, and he's like, "Well, I know. You know what I've been through? People like you, they end up going crazy and killing people, just like my daughter."
Yeah, wow, what a wonderful
Just,
way to bring that up.
well, like, just like, okay, like, yeah, he didn't react in the best way, but he didn't do anything extreme. Like
No,
he didn't kill anybody or beat up anybody or whatever. And I'm like, obviously this kid is going through emotional turbulence because his girlfriend just made out with somebody else at a party and
Mhm.
totally cheated on him in front of everybody. So he's not really happy. And like because of this one instance, Hal Holbrook is like condemning this kid.
Kid, you're gonna murder other people's daughters just like mine because he's just moping.
Yeah, just because he's moping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, I guess you should talk like the beginning of the movie where it's like got the grave diggers and they're burying Dickie Kavanaugh, and he breaks free. Well, and then they don't really show him breaking free, but they show a shovel attacking both the grave diggers, and I think the movie's trying to convince you. Oh, Dickie. In my head, I was like, oh, he attempted, or he didn't commit suicide. He pretended to commit suicide, got taken away so he could escape again.
well, there's like a very select group of people in this movie because you said like they forget David Holbrook's character at a certain point, and it's
Hmm.
true they do, but there's like two other characters like that just totally disappear from the movie.
Uh-huh.
So like I said, like the maniac guy, because they call him maniac, but he's like the really tall basketball player. His girlfriend had just broken up with him, and anyway, like he disappears totally from the movie, and you're thinking, oh well, maybe he might be the killer because his girlfriend, and because they even question him later, he's like, oh, were you upset your girlfriend broke up? He's like, well, yeah, of course I was. Like, like I should be handling this well. Like,
Hmm.
and then there's a nerd character that's just acts kind of odd at the party,
Hmm.
and he disappears, and then he shows up towards the end of the movie too, and they're like looking for suspects. So I was
Yeah.
like, maybe they're trying to set up these guys as sort of like the red herrings.
It may be. I don't know. Because that was one thing about this movie. There are like so many characters in this movie. I don't know what it is. There's like so many people to follow and look at. And I mean, the nerdy guy there, he was easy. He stood out. But to me, all these people, not all of them, most of these people looked very similar. And I mixed people together a lot of the movies. I didn't know people's names. That was my big issue with the movie. So, like, the thing with the red herrings would be like, I don't even know who these are. I know one guy's named Michael Benson, but he's dead. He dies at the beginning of the movie, and then people just disappear.
Well, I remembered. So there, I mean, I remember Ted. I remember uh, Don Sorensen because I kept saying, "Oh, it's Don Sorensen," and and Katie Cav. There's Dickie Kavanaugh. There's Lynn. So I watched this. I rewatched the movie, like I said, a second time just so I could watching them with subtitles, and that helped out a lot too.
Gotcha. Yeah, because this movie is like a wall of noise. People talk over each other a lot. Like there would be scene because the audio in this movie in general, I think, is just pretty piss poor, and it's probably just
It,
from like the quickly how quickly filmed it was.
yeah, I think so. But
Yeah.
I will say, like, because on the Blu-ray for this movie, there are some interviews
Hmm.
for this, and they're not. I'm not gonna lie, there's not a whole lot of substance to these,
I skipped
and
through them a little bit.
yeah, there's not like a whole. Well, like some of them, it's like they were scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like there's like I was like, because there was somebody, I forget what his name was. It was like Paul something, Paul Christie,
Hmm.
and as listed one of the interviewees, and I was like, which character did he play? And it was just dancer. So it was literally just he was a dancer. And I'm like, oh, so he wasn't even like a character.
Where are they digging
and,
these people
and
up from?
so I thought that was kind of funny, but he got his own little interview spot in there. But for the most part, everyone seemed to have a good time making it, and
Yeah.
they all seemed like to have like a good time. The other funny part was that this movie was originally called The Scare Maker.
Yeah. I actually have something really interesting about that. I don't know if it's that interesting, but when it was called the Scaremaker, and they're talking about this in the commentary, um, it premiered all around Florida. They were talking about how many places it premiered at in Florida. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I
Um,
remember.
yeah.
I remember
Well,
it premiering.
oh,
I
you were
mean,
there.
oh what?
Oh,
I mean, what?
lying about your age. But they said Bradenton, Florida, at a cheap theater, and that's where my fiance is from. And I
Ah,
was like, cheap theater, huh? I think I know where that's at. And they said DeSoto Mall, and I was like, I've been to that cheap theater. I saw Dumb and Dumber 2 there. It is actually shut down now. But I was like, oh wow, I went to the one of the theaters that this movie premiered at, and I don't know, I thought that was a fun, interesting thing. It was it's a crappy
they,
theater, but
they didn't leave any promotional material behind.
no posters. There was no museum for it or anything, which is
The
sad.
bear costume like was in
Yeah,
a glass
yeah,
case.
when I was at that theater, I probably am like, what the hell was that?
um, oh, another fun fact. So I guess like the two of the characters in this movie ended up getting married to each other.
Yep, yeah, I
Uh,
did watch that part of that interview.
which is the nerd character, Don or John Didrikson,
Hmm.
and Lauren Marie Taylor, who was also in one of the movies that we talked about before, Friday the 13th Part 2. She played Vicky. You remember the character Vicky from Friday the 13th Part 2?
Mm-mm.
You're nodding your head, so I can. Yes, of course.
Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yes, of course. Sorry, I forgot that this is a podcast. They don't we don't see head motions.
No. Um, but yeah, she. I just thought that was kind of funny that they did that, and see the video. Apparently, the guy had like a YouTube page where they're.
Yeah, you sent that over to me.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, when I was watching the movie, I was looking at her in the movie and I was like, she looks really familiar. Yeah, the Vicky. I remember
Yeah.
Vicky. I looked up pictures of her.
Yeah, she was in Friday the 13th Part 2, which is probably like her biggest claim to fame. But
Hmm.
and oh, and also too the main girl, Julie Montgomery. She was also in Revenge of the Nerds. She was Betty Giles.
Oh yeah, I remember Betty Giles.
So, do you remember? You know, or Betty Childs? I think
I
that's what it is.
I don't
Well,
remember.
there's a very famous scene, which is by today's standards is very
Oh
bad.
yeah.
Like, so I thought it was funny because she spoke really highly of the scene. She's like, oh, like, well, we're talking about a completely different movie, but she held that movie in wide regard. But anyway, getting back into the girls' night out. Like I said, this movie originally premiered as a scare maker, and they re-released it again in 1984 as Girls Night Out.
Hmm.
And I think that was more so to capitalize on a lot of the slash movies that were coming out. So it's like, oh yeah, let's re-release this under a different title.
Yeah, because that's just what movies did back in those days, like just to make a little bit more money, is just to re-release it as a different title, and then if you saw the same movie, well, whatever, we got your money.
Yeah. And they said one thing that really pissed off the cast, they put a girl on the poster that wasn't even in the movie.
That would upset me too. Like you couldn't have just put me on the cover.
Yeah, like anybody else that was in the movie, which the cover art for the on the Blu-ray is actually like a really good one. That's what made it stand
Yeah,
out for me, which is like the bear costume was coming through a window and grabbing a girl.
yeah. It's actually just a scene from the movie, and I like the bear costume. How if there's one thing I like the steak knives thing. It uses like Freddy claws before Freddy Krueger, but with like steak knives. And the commentary did give some insights, like, oh yeah, because the killer ends up being somebody who works in food service, and that would make sense why they would have those knives. I was like, oh okay, yeah, that's a fun little touch.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you originally said, no, yeah, the costume doesn't look good,
Yeah.
but I think it works in terms of like it's supposed to look kind of creepy, and it does look kind of creepy a little bit. Like who would actually think that's an acceptable mascot look for like somebody to dance around and like cheer on a basketball team? But
Mhm.
whatever. There, the one thing I will give you in terms like I do like a lot of the relationships, and I kind of I liked a lot of the interactions like some are having. Like there's like the two stoner girls that are kind of like
Yeah.
smoking weed. That was kind of funny. Or like
Mhm.
when the scavenger hunt does happen and they're trying to figure out the clues. I like those types of scenes. The thing I thought was I did not like was they have like this weird love triangle thing going on
Mhm.
where it has Ted and he's with a girl named Lynn, but he becomes attracted to Don Sorensen, this kind of like
Yeah.
this, I guess what, like a real sophisticated woman type or whatever you want to
Yeah, I get
say.
what you're
But
saying.
yeah, she's a real upper class type of woman. And again, he's flirting and like and hitting on Don Sorensen, and like while his girlfriend comes in and she's totally just like, come on, you big lug, like get a, like
Uh-huh.
whereas like she should be like, what the hell, like type of thing.
Yeah.
And they do end up cheating on their respective partners to be with each other. And I like again, I don't know what the I don't think this movie needed a love triangle is what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. No, I mean, I guess if I was to complain about the movie, I think to me, I know you said the relationships were good, and I did like the two girls smoking weed because that actually felt like real, like the conversation they had. I liked their like It felt kind of ad libbed, which I love Judd Apatow who invented that.
Yeah, you're
But
like, this movie could have been like another hour longer.
yeah. Oh yeah, I would have loved that. But no, I just thought the plot was or the plot lines they tried setting up just weren't all that interesting. And then when you get to the kills are very subdued in this movie, like we were saying at the beginning. And I don't think sometimes they're interesting, but they could have just been better. So it's kind of like both worlds to me. I didn't find all that interesting, the horror or the Animal House side of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I kind of dug
Hmm.
I dug a lot of it, and it felt like they were more trying to go for like a college movie versus
Hmm.
like a serial killer movie. So probably more Animal House than slasher movie, honestly. But
Hmm.
I do think they kind of picked up on two popular movies, and I do think it's a little to me it's like it's just as good as some other slasher movies out there. I
There
mean,
are
and
some like, yeah.
so I mean, I definitely think it's not a bad movie, but I
Mhm.
could see why nobody wouldn't be wowed by it. I wasn't either. So
Yeah, but
I just I the thing that was I didn't like was I don't this movie did the thing that did Alice Sweet Alice did,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, you remember this character? Like that was like in a total throwaway scene. Like they,
Hmm.
I'm gonna say who the killer is. They were the killer this whole time.
Yeah. Are we saying who the killer was?
I think we can. I
The
mean,
lunch lady. Oh my god, the lunch lady was the killer the whole time. It's so silly how it's set up. And it comes as like a shock, but not like a good kind of shock. But I do like the end, okay, because she's like crazy. She's like, "No, Dickie's alive," like, or he left. He's good. And then the final shot of the movie is Dickie Kavanaugh in a wheelchair in a freezer, and you don't know if he's dead or not. And it zooms in on him, and the movie ends. And at first, I was like, "Wow, that sucked. I don't like that." But now it's like stuck with me. I actually kind of like it. It's so ambiguous, and I kind of
yeah.
like that.
Well, yeah, because and I do like too that they got so the killer is played by Rutanya Alda, and
Okay.
and she she is playing both the lunch lady and Dickie Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I like that too. And it's really like interesting because like they show a lot of pictures of Dickie and he looks weird. He kind of looks like a puppet as we watched. Well, we actually watched this movie together, just to let the
Yeah,
audience know. And our friend Chris was like, "Oh, puppet looking," and I was like, "Yeah, it kind of looks like a puppet." But I never connected that they were played by the same person.
yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the thing it reminded me of was the movie Magic, like the puppet from that movie.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it looks like that that puppet, and but yeah, it's just a weird face, and like you said, like
Mhm.
the movie. I mean, the one of the characters does get stabbed, and they're all just kind of confronting Dickie's sister, the lunch lady. They're
Mhm.
confronting her and be like, Dickie's dead. Like he's dead. Like what are you talking about? And she's like, no, I just picked him up today. And like you said, it's the scene in the freezer, and the movie ends right there. Like they don't. It's not like a resolution or anything.
Mhm.
It's just like that's
Yeah,
it. It's the
because
movie.
it's not like the I think about and this movie references this very early in the movie. They're like, oh, Norman Bates. They bring up Psycho, and you expect like in the end of Psycho, they have that whole scene where they explain the twist or like, well, yeah, this is what happened. I would you'd expect that from this, but no explanation whatsoever.
No, I do like that. I was like that. I was not expecting that, so I do
I
appreciate
think
that.
I think that stuck with me the most. And the other scene that stuck with me the most is the one where it's the two shirtless men feeding each other Jack Daniels. uh,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't know why. I just thought that was so funny. They're like hugging each other on each other. They're not gay or anything. They're just really great friends.
No, I mean they're just having a good time,
Hey, that's okay. That's what college is all about.
and they go to a costume party afterwards.
Yes, yeah. Um,
I thought at first I was like man like because well like the whole movie is based around like the scavenger hunt, and I keep talking about the scavenger hunt, and the scavenger hunt doesn't happen until like an hour into the movie,
yeah.
and uh, what I do like is the killer is trying to figure out like to get answers on the scavenger hunt, and it just goes into like this file cabinet and just says scavenger hunt like
Yeah,
on the cabinet.
and it's so stupid too because all the rest of the files will have like the letter, just a letter or number on. It'll be like A and numbers, and then right in the middle it says scavenger hunt. So it's like, oh, I know which one to go to. The scavenger hunt aspect of this movie is so weird too because it's all through the radio, and
Yeah, this it's just like the Warriors.
just like it kind of like yeah, but not as well, not as well filmed. And but that sets up movies where it becomes kind of like just vignettes of like random people and some characters you saw before just going around getting killed. You think the campus would be busier during a scavenger hunt, but there's only like two people on screen at a time.
No, well, I mean, like I said, this was a completely deserted
Yeah.
campus, so they're just like, it probably was like two people. Like and then like a couple of people filming it.
Yeah, probably. I bet you it was a little scary out there.
Yeah, I'd be scared.
Yeah.
Uh, but I overall, like I said, I was pretty enjoyed by it. I thought, for an '80s slasher movie, I've seen a lot worse, and like I said, like the characters in it are not unlikable or anything like that. I thought they were pretty tolerable, and I think they're pretty realistic. Save maybe for like that David Holbrook's character possibly, but the I thought it was a good movie. I would give it a pretty good recommend.
Well, Brian, this is one of those times where we disagree. Um,
Oh, you're
I
not
don't know.
allowed to disagree.
No, I'm disagreeing right now. Okay, it's gonna be like Siskel and Ebert. You can yell at me, call me a moron, idiot, whatever. But I don't know. I thought this was I just thought it was a little too boring. I wasn't that interested in it, and I really wouldn't recommend it. I think you could do better this Halloween season.
Yeah, okay. Name one better movie than this. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Oh God, you're right. The first movie that came to my mind was Girls' Night Out.
No, I yeah, that's all right. We disagree on this one. But Nathan, I love getting scared just as much as the next guy. So let's keep the horror theme going here, Nathan. Nathan, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Next time we are going to be talking about Brian De Palma's The Fury, and that is streaming over on Max.
Terrific. Can't wait. I'm already shivering at the thought. But
I saw it.
I thank you so much for joining us. If you have any thoughts and opinions about this show, or there's other spooky movies you think we should talk about, please email us over at drivein-double-feature-podcast@gmail.com. Or don't forget to follow us on the spookiest platform, X, because they're about to charge some people possibly, and you may not find us there.
We'll see.
At DIDF Pod. And check out the Patreon at patreon.com/drive-in-double-feature-podcast. But until next time.